My hands are still shaking. NGL. I never thought I'd be posting something like this on a throwaway. But here I am. I'm Dave, 35, been with Brenda for 10 years, married for 7. Things felt normal, stable, until last week when she looked at me with this weird glint in her eye and suggested we spice things up by seeing other people. My whole world just tipped. This is where it all started to unravel. It started subtly a few weeks ago. Brenda, out of nowhere, began dropping hints about how our sex life was getting a little routine. She'd say stuff like, "Don't you think it would be exciting to try new things? Really spice it up?" NGL, I thought she meant like role play or something. I was down for that, TBH. But then her suggestions started getting wilder. One night she just laid it out there, all casual while we were watching TV. "What if we, explored dating other people?" My blood ran cold. Excuse me? My wife, my partner of a decade, just suggested we open up our marriage? My jaw probably hit the floor. I tried to stay calm, but inside I was screaming. "Brenda, what are you even talking about?" "No, absolutely not," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "That's not what we signed up for. That's not what I signed up for. I'm not comfortable with that at all." I thought that would be the end of it, a clear, definitive no. Boy, was I wrong. A few days later, we went to this party, a colleague's anniversary thing. Brenda was buzzing, extra bubbly, pulling me from conversation to conversation. At one point, she practically shoved me towards this woman, Tiffany, from her yoga class. "Dave, you have to dance with Tiffany. She's always saying how good you are on the dance floor." Tiffany looked a little embarrassed, but gave me a shy smile. IDK, it felt weird, but Brenda was being so insistent, so I went along with it. Tiffany was nice, a little flirty, but nothing I thought was out of line. I figured Brenda was just trying to be a matchmaker for a friend or something. But then I saw Brenda. She was across the room laughing, her arm wrapped around some guy I'd never seen before. He was tall, blonde, super fit, like Nordic model fit. And they weren't just talking. They were dancing. Intimately. Too intimately. Her hand was on his lower back. His hand was low on her hip. Their bodies were practically pressed together. And the way she was looking at him, it wasn't a friendly look. It was full-on flirtation, bordering on desire. A switch flipped in my head. All those spice things up comments, the dating other people suggestion, her pushing me towards Tiffany. It all clicked. I felt like a damn puppet. Played. Rage started bubbling up inside me, a hot, nasty wave that made my vision blur. NGL, I wanted to walk over there and rip them apart, but something held me back, pride maybe, or just pure shock. I just stood there for a minute, heart hammering, watching her. Then I turned on my heel. I couldn't be there anymore. As I was heading for the door, Tiffany caught up to me. She looked concerned. "Dave, are you okay? You look really upset." I just shook my head, not trusting myself to speak. "Look," she said, lowering her voice. "I don't know what Brenda's got going on, but her coworker, Lisa, she's really into this whole open marriage thing. Brenda's been talking about it a lot with Farron, and Brenda knows. She knows I've always thought you were really attractive." That hit me like a gut punch. So Brenda wasn't just exploring options. She was actively pushing me into a situation she knew I was uncomfortable with, using another person's long-standing attraction to me as some kind of distraction, a setup. The rage came back, colder this time, sharper. It wasn't just about anger anymore. It was about deep, soul-crushing betrayal. I drove home in a blur, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. The second I walked through the door, I went straight to our bedroom, grabbed a duffel bag, and started throwing my clothes, my toiletries, my laptop in there. Everything I needed. I didn't know what I was doing exactly, but I knew I couldn't sleep in that bed, not tonight, not with her. I dragged the bag to the guest room, slammed the door shut, and locked it. The click of the lock felt final. A line had been drawn. Hours later, I heard Brenda come home. I heard her stumbling around, then the distinct sound of her trying to open our bedroom door. I heard the handle jiggle, a small frustrated sigh, then silence. I imagined her standing there confused, maybe a little angry. Good. She deserved to be confused. She deserved to feel something. I didn't sleep. Not really. My mind was racing, replaying every interaction, every look, every whispered comment. My initial rage had settled into a cold, hard resolve. I was done being played for a fool. I decided right then and there I was going to observe. I was going to watch her. Subtly, piece together what the hell was going on. Call it paranoia, call it a gut feeling. But I knew in my bones this wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a red flag the size of Texas. The next morning she tried to play it off. Knocked on the guest room door, all sweet. "Dave, honey, what happened last night? Why did you leave and why is the door locked?" "I was just, testing boundaries at the party. You know me, I like to be adventurous." Her voice was sickly sweet, but I heard the lie underneath it. Testing boundaries? What a load of crap. That wasn't testing boundaries. That was crossing lines she knew I had. I opened the door just enough to see her face. My voice was flat, devoid of emotion. "We'll talk later, Brenda. I need some space." I shut the door before she could argue. I could feel the emotional betrayal like a physical weight in my chest, and a dread, a deep, unsettling dread, that this was just the beginning. She kept trying to talk, to touch me, to reconcile, but I just kept my distance. Emotionally, physically. I was a ghost in my own house. And that day I started noticing what time she left for work, what time she came home, if her phone was always with her, if she got strange texts. The investigation had begun. After that party and my self-imposed exile to the guest room, things went from bad to worse. My observation phase kicked into overdrive. The first thing I noticed was her phone. Brenda used to leave it lying around, charging on the kitchen counter, just like me. Now, it was glued to her hand, face down, always. If she walked away for a second, she'd take it with her, even to the bathroom, NGL. Total red flag. It was like watching a spy movie, except it was my wife. Then came the appearance shift. Brenda's always been pretty, but suddenly she was obsessed with how she looked. New clothes popping up in her closet, more makeup than usual, spending ages on her hair. I'm talking full glam just to go to yoga or run errands. IDK, it felt like she was dressing for someone else, someone she wanted to impress. And it definitely wasn't me, considering I was barely getting a grunt in the mornings. The late night started next. First, it was an impromptu girls' night that ended at 11 p.m. Then it was working late until almost midnight, even though her job rarely required that. The excuses were getting thinner, too. Traffic was terrible. We just lost track of time. Vague. Always vague. And the worst part, she'd come home smelling faintly of a perfume I didn't recognize. Not her usual classy scent, but something bolder, sweeter. The first concrete piece of evidence came in the mail, a credit card statement. Buried among grocery bills and gas receipts was a charge for the Gilded Fork. I'd never even heard of it. I Googled it. Super high-end, ridiculously expensive, like a place you take someone to seriously impress them. We certainly hadn't been there. We couldn't afford a place like that for a regular Tuesday night. My heart did this weird flip-flop thing, part dread, part a sick satisfaction that I was right. A few days later, she told me she was going to Lisa's house, her coworker, the one who apparently loved open marriages, for the afternoon. Later that evening, I casually mentioned something about Lisa's new garden, knowing Lisa lived in an apartment and had no garden. Brenda stammered, then quickly changed the subject, her face flushing. Caught. Right there. She hadn't been at Lisa's. So where the hell had she been? My detective work intensified. I logged into our joint online banking. My hands were shaking a little as I scrolled through the transactions. And there it was. The Grand Suites Hotel, Willow Creek. Willow Creek? That's like an hour's drive away. A town we literally never go to unless we're passing through on a road trip. It was a charge for 2 nights. My stomach clenched. When I confronted her about it, trying to keep my voice neutral, she just rolled her eyes. "Oh, that was just a work retreat, Dave. Or maybe a girls' night. IDK, I forget which one." Her casualness, her dismissal, it felt like a slap. A work retreat? For 2 nights, an hour away without telling me? A girls' night in a hotel? Who does that? It was gaslighting, pure and simple. trying to make me feel like I was the crazy one for even asking. From then on, I started checking her car. Before she left, I'd subtly glance at the odometer. When she came home, I'd check it again. The mileage never added up. Never. She'd say she went to the gym and then the store, which was a 10-mile round trip. Her car would have 30 or 40 extra miles. Where was she going? Who was she seeing? The anger was a constant hum under my skin now. I started a hidden log, a plain text file on my old laptop tucked away in the back of a closet. Dates, times she left, times she came home, her excuses, what I found, receipts, mileage discrepancies, smells. It felt clinical, almost cold, like I was building a case against my own wife. And with every entry, the wall between us grew thicker, colder. During all this, Brenda kept pushing the open marriage thing. Seriously, Dave, we need to talk about this again. I really think it could be good for us, for our connection. She'd say it with this forced enthusiasm, a look in her eye that was almost desperate. It was like she was trying to normalize her behavior, to get my permission after the fact. But I was so emotionally numb by this point, so detached, that her words just sounded like background noise. The idea of intimacy with her felt repulsive. That pit in my stomach grew deeper. I absolutely knew that I couldn't ignore this anymore. I opened up Google Chrome, went incognito, and started searching. Private investigators near me. The words felt heavy, alien on the screen. It was real now. This wasn't just a suspicion, it was an investigation. And I was going to need help to get the undeniable truth. I started making sure I saved copies of everything. Screenshots of banking statements, photos of receipts, everything. I was going to build my case. The odometer checks and the vague excuses were adding up, but I needed something undeniable. Something that would shut down any future gaslighting. One morning I was working from home, but actually staking out our street. Brenda left earlier than usual, saying she had an early meeting. I waited a few minutes, then followed her in. She didn't go towards her office. She drove to a residential area, pulled over a few blocks away, and parked her car. Not at work, not at a gym, but on a quiet residential street. My heart was pounding. I waited, watched. She got out and walked down the street, disappearing from view. I eventually drove past and saw her car, unmistakable, just sitting there. An unfamiliar street, an unfamiliar house. A few days later, I followed her again. This time, she went to a bustling coffee shop in a different part of town. I parked down the street, put on a baseball cap, and went inside pretending to be on my phone. And there she was, sitting at a corner table, laughing, leaning in close with a guy. Not the Nordic guy from the party, but someone new. Dark hair, suit jacket, definitely not a casual friend. He was holding her hand across the table, stroking her fingers. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped my phone, but I managed to snap a few pictures. Blurred but undeniable. The intimacy, the casual affection, it tore me up, but also solidified my resolve. I had to get more. The next day, a gift from the universe, or maybe just Brenda's carelessness, arrived. She usually takes her work briefcase in mod, but that evening, she left it on the passenger seat of her car, completely unlocked. My heart jumped. This was it. I waited until she was showering, then quietly went out to the garage. My hands were clammy as I unzipped the bag. Inside, under some work documents, I found a small, leather-bound notebook, and tucked inside that, a stack of handwritten notes. NGL, my stomach dropped reading them. Explicit, raw, love notes from someone else. Can't stop thinking about you. Counting down the hours until I can feel your skin against mine. You drive me wild, my beautiful Brenda. My vision blurred with rage and a sickening sense of violation. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional. Every sweet word, every intimate detail ripped a hole through my chest. There were also printed messages, screenshots of texts, full of similar affectionate, suggestive language. This wasn't a fling. This was an ephemer, a full-blown emotional and physical betrayal. I carefully photographed every single page, every note, every text message. Then I copied them onto a hidden flash drive. I put everything back exactly as I found it. She never knew. A day later, after the initial shock wore off, I was still reeling. I couldn't stop thinking about where she was going, who she was seeing. I needed concrete, real-time data. I bought a small, cheap GPS tracker online. It was tiny, magnetic. While she was at work, I managed to slip it onto the frame under her car. My heart was thumping, but I got it done. The app on my phone immediately lit up. I was tracking her. The tracker was a game changer. It confirmed my suspicions immediately. Every day, during her work lunch or her gym time or her errands, she was going to the same damn address. Over and over, a house in a quiet suburban neighborhood, about 20 minutes from our home. I typed the address into Google Maps, then cross-referenced it with public records. Scott Miller. That was his name. Scott. My blood ran cold, but also there was a grim satisfaction. I had a name. I drove by his house a few times, got more pictures. Brenda's car parked there, sometimes my car. Sometimes I caught her walking in or walking out, always looking over her shoulder, always trying to be discreet. But I saw her. I saw them. The way she'd hug him, the way he'd kiss her hair. Each photo was a dagger, but also another piece of irrefutable proof. Then the jewelry started appearing. A new necklace, a delicate silver bracelet. Oh, this, just a gift from work, Dave, for hitting my sales targets. Her voice was light, too innocent. But they weren't cheap. These were nice pieces. I started looking for receipts, and sure enough, tucked away in an unused handbag, I found them. Box receipts from a local high-end jeweler, and the name on the receipt wasn't Brenda. It was Scott Miller. My chest ached. He was buying her gifts. NGL, I felt like a criminal, but I had to know for sure. One afternoon, I called the jewelry store. "Hi, this is Scott Miller," I said, trying to deepen my voice. "I wanted to check on an order I placed recently, a few pieces for my girlfriend." The saleswoman was super helpful. "Oh, yes, Mr. Miller. We just helped you with that beautiful diamond pendant and the custom engraved bracelet for Brenda, didn't we? She's such a lovely lady, always so excited when she comes in with you." My stomach twisted. Girlfriend. For Brenda. He didn't even try to hide it. The store even gave me the details of his purchases, confirming everything. The pieces, the dates, the prices, all for Brenda, all from Scott. The puzzle was complete, and it was uglier than I could have ever imagined. All my amateur detective work had led to this. I couldn't do it alone anymore. The emotional toll was too much, and the scope of what I was uncovering felt like it needed professional handling. I finally made the call and hired a private investigator. His name was Mike, a no-nonsense former police detective. We met in a discreet coffee shop, and I laid everything out for him. The GPS data, the photos I'd taken, the credit card statements, the mileage discrepancies, Brenda's sudden interest in her appearance, the vague excuses, the jewelry receipts. I showed him the explicit notes I'd found in her briefcase. He just listened, nodded, occasionally jotting something down. When I finished, he looked at me with an almost sympathetic grimness. "You've built a pretty solid foundation here, Dave. I can definitely take it from here." Mike started his surveillance almost immediately. His first few reports were a gut punch. NGL, I thought it was just Scott. Maybe the Nordic guy from the party was a one-off. But Mike's reports, complete with date-stamped photos, showed Brenda meeting multiple men. The Nordic guy was definitely one of them. Confirmed. Another older, professional-looking guy. And Scott, of course, was still a regular. The photos Mike sent were far clearer than anything I'd managed to get. Brenda, laughing, holding hands, kissing. Sometimes just a quick peck on the cheek. Other times a full-on embrace. Each picture was a fresh stab, but also a stark, undeniable confirmation of the scale of her betrayal. My heart didn't just break. It shattered into a million pieces. It wasn't just an affair. It was a full-blown lifestyle. Mike didn't just follow Brenda. He dug into her financial activities, which was something I hadn't even fully considered. He quickly uncovered more significant irregularities. Large cash withdrawals that didn't align with her spending habits. Transfers to unfamiliar accounts. It felt like she was actively bleeding our joint finances dry. Then one evening, I was looking for something in my dresser drawer. My grandpa's antique pocket watch, a family heirloom, was usually tucked away in a velvet pouch. It wasn't there. I searched everywhere, frantic. That watch was irreplaceable, a piece of my history, It had been in my family for generations. My stomach dropped. I remembered Mike mentioning pawn shops as a common way for people to get quick, untraceable cash. With trembling fingers, I went online. I secretly checked local pawn shop databases, the ones that list recently pawned items. And there it was, a description matching my watch, complete with a serial number I recognized from the engraving on the back. Pawned by Brenda. Weeks ago, the date was right around the time the girls' nights and late work meetings had really ramped up. My anger hit a new level. She wasn't just cheating, she was stealing from me, from us, from my family's legacy, to fund her scandalous life. I immediately called Mike. He was already aware. Yeah, Dave, we've been looking into that. It seems Brenda has been frequenting a few pawn shops. Not just the watch either. We've confirmed a few other small valuables from your home have gone missing and ended up there. Looks like she's been liquidating assets for cash. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just emotional betrayal. This was financial sabotage. That night, I tried to keep my voice calm, but the words felt like ash in my mouth. Hey, Brenda, I said casually. Have you seen Grandpa's pocket watch? I can't find it anywhere. She looked at me completely deadpan. Your watch? No, Dave, I haven't seen it. Are you sure you didn't just misplace it? You're always so disorganized. The gaslighting was so blatant, so utterly without remorse, that it solidified something in me. Any lingering doubt, any residual hope for reconciliation, evaporated. Mike continued to track our joint accounts. He found large, irregular bank transfers that Brenda had initiated, moving substantial amounts of money into accounts I didn't recognize. She was systematically siphoning funds, preparing for something. I realized she wasn't just having affairs. She was meticulously setting herself up, financially, for a life without me, probably using my own money to do it. The scale of her deception, the cold calculation, was breathtaking. The emotional numbness that had started weeks ago hardened into a cold, unbreakable resolve. There was no going back. No trying to fix things. This wasn't a marriage that could be saved. This was a hostile takeover of my life, my finances, my trust. I called Mike and told him, I want everything, every single piece of evidence. I want to proceed with full legal force. I'm done. Mike's investigation was a whirlwind of gut-wrenching discoveries. The biggest one came a few days after I learned about the pawned watch. He called me, his voice serious. Dave, we've confirmed Brenda has a burner phone, a second cell, completely separate from her main one. My blood ran cold. A burner phone, like something out of a crime drama. Mike managed to get his hands on it and used forensic tools to extract everything, texts, call logs, even deleted messages. The contents were a nuclear explosion in my carefully constructed world. It wasn't just explicit details of multiple affairs. It was a full-blown narrative of her double life. The text confirmed the influence of Lisa, her coworker, feeding her the open marriage ideology, and a guy named Greg, another one of her partners. But the most damning were the conversations with Scott. He wasn't just a partner, he was clearly the primary one, and the text painted him as a manipulative piece of work, constantly pushing Brenda, questioning her, making her feel like she was lucky to have him. The worst part, the absolute lowest blow, was reading their plans. Brenda and Scott. They were discussing leaving me. Not just leaving me, but leaving and taking the children. My children. Our children. They talked about moving in together, about how they'd manage things once she was free of me. My stomach lurched and I actually felt physically sick. The sheer cold calculation, the malicious depth of her planning, her willingness to rip our kids from their home and their father, all for this. I couldn't even form coherent thoughts. Heartbroken doesn't begin to cover it. It felt like I was drowning in a cesspool of her lies. And it wasn't just about the kids. Mike also found discussions about our joint marital assets. Scott was clearly advising her on how to secure what she was entitled to, how to maximize her take from our divorce. He was actively helping her strategize against me. I realized she hadn't just been having affairs. She had been meticulously, cold-heartedly plotting her entire exit strategy, using our shared life as her personal piggy bank and escape route. The irony? Right as all this was coming to light, Brenda suddenly started trying to love bomb me. Out of nowhere, she was affectionate, wanting to hold my hand, suggesting we watch a movie together, leaving little notes. "I miss us," she'd say, or "We need to reconnect." It was so transparent, so fake. She was trying to soothe me, to lull me into a false sense of security while she continued her scheming. But I knew better. I kept my guard up, maintained a stoic, almost numb demeanor, pretending to believe her half-hearted attempts at reconciliation. Every fake smile, every empty touch just fueled my resolve to gather more evidence and ensure she faced the consequences of her actions. Stick around to the end to see how life's costly choices unfold. Mike, bless him, wasn't just a PI. He was like my silent partner in this investigation. He didn't just track calls and texts. He did full background checks on Scott and the other men. The results were not surprising, but still damning. Scott, it turned out, had a history of financial instability, multiple bankruptcies, a few past due child support judgments, even a minor arrest record for fraud from years ago. He was no prize, no stable provider. Brenda was throwing away her family, her marriage, her integrity for a con artist. It made my blood boil. Brenda, meanwhile, started probing. "Honey, have you updated our investment portfolio lately? What's the balance on the savings account? We should really go over the house equity, don't you think?" She was trying to extract specific financial information from me, clearly on Scott's advice. I pretended to be cooperative, but I gave her only limited, vague, or intentionally misleading information. "Oh, the portfolio's down a bit, market's slow, I'd say, or savings? Not much. You know how expenses are." I wasn't going to make it easy for her. The next step was unavoidable. With Mike's comprehensive report, the photographic evidence, the financial records, the secret phone extractions, the background checks, and the proof of her pawning my family heirlooms, I was ready. I discreetly contacted a highly recommended divorce attorney. His name came up repeatedly in online forums for difficult cases, known for being aggressive and thorough. The first consultation was set. This wasn't just about getting out, it was about protecting myself, my children, and what was left of my future. My first meeting with the divorce attorney was a blur of legal jargon, but also a lifeline. He was sharp, pragmatic, and immediately understood the gravity of the situation. He outlined everything: asset protection, the intricacies of custody laws in our state, and a full-blown legal strategy. "Dave," he said, "this isn't just about divorce. It's about protecting your children and your future from a calculated scheme." He advised me to quietly secure any remaining valuables, important documents like birth certificates, passports, and titles, and especially any family heirlooms that hadn't been pawned yet. My grandpa's watch was a sore point, but I gathered what I could. I also, on his advice, opened a separate individual bank account. I started funneling any personal funds I could into it, setting aside money for future legal fees and living expenses. It felt like I was disentangling myself, thread by painful thread, from Brenda's web. Meanwhile, Brenda continued her relentless pursuit of financial information. "Dave, I really need to see the latest investment statements," she'd push, or, "Can you get me the updated figures on the house value?" I'd deflect, always. "Oh, I haven't had a chance," or, "I'll get to it when I can, I'm swamped at work." My answers were always vague, always just enough to keep her from getting what she wanted without raising too much suspicion. Then came the next step my attorney suggested: hidden cameras, discreet, tiny ones, placed in common areas of the house, the living room, the kitchen, the hallway. It felt invasive, but he assured me it was legal in our state for my own home and crucial for capturing any further admissions. NGL, the first few days were quiet. Then it happened. The cameras caught her, on the phone, talking to someone, her voice hushed but clearly audible. "Yeah, Scott and I are going away this weekend," she'd say, laughing. "Dave has no idea. He thinks it's a girls' trip. He's so clueless." My stomach churned, but the recording was clear. And it wasn't just Scott. I heard her openly discuss details of her affairs with other men, planning a rendezvous, talking about how she was juggling them all. The absolute worst was a call I recorded where she was talking to one of her lovers. I recognized the voice of the older, professional-looking guy Mike had photographed her with. She was trashing me. "Dave's such a stick in the mud," she scoffed. "So boring. He just doesn't understand what I need." My face burned with shame and anger. To hear your wife, the mother of your children, speak about you with such contempt to her lover, it was a new kind of low. A few days later, Brenda announced her girls' weekend. Same old routine. Lisa and I are going upstate just for some R&R, you know? She chirped. I just nodded, a stone face, but inside I was buzzing. I immediately called Mike. He confirmed it was a rendezvous with Scott. This was my window. I needed the kids safe, away from the impending chaos. I called my parents and arranged for Sarah and Emily to stay with them for the weekend, making up some excuse about an urgent work trip. They were happy to take them. I gave Mike clear instructions. I need undeniable video evidence of this girl's weekend, Mike, everything. Dates, times and locations. Make sure it's pristine. He assured me he would. When Brenda finally packed her bag and waved goodbye, a cheerful fake smile plastered on her face. She had no idea the trap was closing around her. She was completely oblivious, driving off to her illicit weekend while I was meticulously preparing to dismantle her entire fraudulent world. With the house quiet and the children safely with my parents, I spent the weekend finalizing everything with my attorney. We refined the legal strategy, going over every piece of evidence, every potential counter-argument from Brenda. I worked tirelessly assembling a detailed index binder. Photos, GPS logs, bank statements, the extracted texts, the hidden camera footage, the pawn shop receipts, every single piece of her deceit, neatly organized and ready to be presented. It was a physical manifestation of her betrayal, heavy in my hands. That Saturday evening, while I was sitting alone in the quiet house, the phone vibrated. A text from Brenda. Missing you, honey. Having a relaxing time. Wish you were here. The sheer audacity, the sickening hypocrisy, almost made me laugh. Instead, I just felt a chilling mix of anger, profound betrayal, and a grim, cold satisfaction. The game was almost over, and she had no idea she was about to lose everything. The weekend felt like an eternity, but finally on Monday morning, Mike delivered. A neatly organized file full of high-resolution photos and video footage from Brenda's girls' weekend. Irrefutable proof. Brenda and Scott checking into a romantic B&B an hour away, holding hands, kissing, entering and leaving their room together. There was no denying it. I flipped through the pictures, watched the short video clips. No emotion, just a cold, calculated calm. I was beyond anger, beyond heartbreak. Now it was about justice. I knew exactly what I needed to do. I called Brenda. Brenda, I said, my voice flat. I need you to come home. We need to talk. Immediately, it's important. I gave her no hint, no tremor in my voice. She probably thought it was another attempt at reconciliation, another chance for her to love bomb me. She arrived home about an hour later, chipper, with that same saccharine smile. Hey, honey, what's up? I had such a lovely weekend. Missed you, though. She even tried to hug me, to kiss my cheek. I pulled away subtly. Let's just sit down, I said, gesturing to the living room sofa. I sat opposite her, the large binder of evidence on the coffee table between us. My hands were steady. My voice was calm, almost detached. Brenda, I began, I know everything. Her smile faltered. Know what, Dave? What are you talking about? She tried to sound innocent, but I could see a flicker of fear in her eyes. I know about Scott. I know about the Nordic guy. I know about Greg. I know about the affairs, all of them. I watched her face, utterly blank. Her denial was instantaneous, fierce. What? Are you insane, Dave? This is ridiculous. You're being paranoid. You're imagining things. She was already starting to ramp up the gaslighting, trying to turn it around on me. Her eyes narrowed. You're probably just jealous because I'm finally happy and you're so miserable. I didn't flinch. I reached for the binder and opened it. Slowly, deliberately, I slid the stack of glossy photos across the table towards her. The B&B, her with Scott, hand in hand, kissing. These are from your girls' weekend, Brenda. Mike got some great shots. Her face went from defiant to a sickly pale white. She picked up a photo, her hand trembling. This isn't what it looks like, she stammered, her voice losing its edge. He's just a friend. A friend you go to B&Bs with? I asked, my voice still even. A friend you spend 2 nights with? A friend who buys you expensive jewelry you claim are work gifts? She started to babble, trying to construct a lie, but I cut her off. I pulled out my phone and played an audio recording. It was from the hidden camera in the kitchen. Brenda's voice, clear as day, talking to one of her lovers. Yeah, Dave's such a fool. He has no idea I'm seeing you and Scott. It's so easy to lie to him. The color completely drained from her face. Her jaw went slack. The fight left her, replaced by pure, unadulterated panic. Dave, how did you get that? It doesn't matter how, Brenda, I said, leaning forward slightly. What matters is what's on it, and what's on your other phone. Her eyes went wide, fear truly setting in now. My, my other phone? What other phone? It was a pathetic attempt at denial. The burner phone, Brenda. The one with all the explicit texts to Scott, where you discuss leaving me, taking the kids, and trying to get as much of our money as possible. The one where you talk about how easy it is to manipulate me. She recoiled, her body shaking. You spied on me? You invaded my privacy? This is illegal, Dave. You're sick. She tried one last desperate attempt to shift the blame. You drove me to this. You were never there for me. You never paid attention. I was so lonely. I cut her off, my voice like ice. No, Brenda, you drove yourself to this, and I'm done. I've filed for divorce. I reached under the binder and slid a stack of official-looking papers across the table. These are the papers. You've been served. She stared at the papers, her eyes darting from them to my face, then back again. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Then a primal scream ripped through the air. A furious, uncontrollable rage erupted from her. She snatched the papers, tearing at them, screaming obscenities, accusing me of every imaginable sin. I stood up, towering over her, my voice still unnervingly calm. Brenda, I said, cutting through her hysterics, you have 2 hours to pack a bag with essentials. Then you leave this house. Immediately. You will not be staying here tonight. Or any night after this. Brenda's rage exploded when I told her to leave. You can't make me leave. This is my house, too. You have no right. She was screaming, throwing things, her face contorted. It was ugly, but I was ready for it. My attorney had prepared me for this exact scenario. I reached for another document in my binder, already prepared. Actually, Brenda, I do. This is a legally obtained temporary restraining order and an eviction notice. You have to leave. Now. I placed the papers on the table, my hand unwavering. She stared at them, then back at me, her eyes wild. The reality of the situation finally seemed to sink in. She crumpled, slumping onto the sofa, sobbing. It was a performance, I knew, but a pathetic one. Under my watchful, unblinking eyes, she packed a small bag with essentials. I stood there, arms crossed, saying nothing, just watching her every move. When she was done, she glared at me one last time, a look of pure hatred. You'll regret this, Dave. You'll regret this for the rest of your life. Then she stormed out the door, slamming it behind her, and the silence that followed was deafening, yet strangely peaceful. The hardest part came next, explaining to Sarah and Emily. My parents brought them home later that day. I sat them down, their little faces filled with confusion. I chose my words carefully, age appropriately. Girls, Mommy and Daddy are going to live in separate houses for a while. This isn't your fault, okay? Mommy and Daddy have some grown-up problems that we couldn't fix, but we both love you very, very much. I didn't get into the nitty-gritty of infidelity, but I was honest about the separation and that it was permanent. Sarah, the older one, already seemed to sense the tension. Emily, younger, just looked sad. Brenda, true to form, immediately started trying to contact them excessively, calling, texting, sending gifts. I monitored their communication closely, on my attorney's advice. And just as expected, she began her manipulation, painting herself as the victim, crying to the girls about how mean Daddy was and how Daddy threw her out. I had to counter it calmly, reassuring the girls that they were loved and that sometimes adults make difficult choices, but it wasn't their burden. My first order of business after she left was securing the house. New locks on every door, alarm codes changed, Wi-Fi passwords reset. It felt good, a small measure of control reclaimed. Then the calls started coming. Brenda's extended family, her sister, her mother. Disbelief, anger, accusations aimed at me. How could you just throw her out, Dave? Brenda says you're being cruel. I calmly explained that I had evidence of infidelity and financial mismanagement, and that I was following legal advice. When pushed, I offered to provide a summarized list of key evidence, no graphic details, just enough to show them the depth of her actions. The calls slowly dwindled, replaced by an uneasy silence. Brenda tried to access our joint bank accounts, but they were already frozen by my attorney. She called me, screaming, demanding access to her money. Brenda, I told her, my voice weary, all financial matters will be handled by our attorneys. You won't be accessing anything until a judge decides. As her world publicly unraveled, her various affair partners began to distance themselves. Mike reported that Scott had suddenly gone dark on her, realizing the legal mess she was in. The Nordic guy and the older professional also ghosted her. Lisa and Greg, her enablers, faced their own reckoning within their social and professional circles as the truth started to leak out. Their open marriage philosophy didn't look so liberating now that it had blown up Brenda's life. After the confrontation, after the kids were settled, after the initial storm passed, a profound wave of emotional exhaustion washed over me. It was like I had been holding my breath for months, and now I could finally exhale. The anger, the rage had been replaced by a hollow ache, a deep sadness for the life I thought I had, the trust that was so completely shattered. I knew I couldn't navigate this alone, and neither could the girls. I immediately initiated therapy for myself and for Sarah and Emily to help them process the trauma, the betrayal, and the fundamental shift in their family structure. It was a long, painful road ahead, but for the first time in months, I felt like I was finally taking the first steps towards healing and rebuilding. The court proceedings were as grueling as I expected, a long, drawn-out battle. Standing in that courtroom, looking at Brenda across the aisle, felt surreal. She looked haggard, her usual polished demeanor replaced by a strained, defensive expression. Her attorney, a slick guy with an air of overconfidence, tried to poke holes in our evidence. He argued that my surveillance was illegal, that the recordings were inadmissible, that the financial records were circumstantial. But he was fighting a losing battle. My attorney, the sharpest legal mind I'd ever encountered, systematically dismantled every one of their arguments. He presented Mike's detailed reports, the time-stamped photos and videos, the GPS logs, the extracted text from Brenda's burner phone, the bank statements showing her transfers and the pawn shop receipts. Each piece of evidence was a nail in her coffin, NGL. It felt like watching a slow-motion car crash, but for Brenda, not for me. The judge, initially stoic, grew visibly unimpressed with Brenda's attorney's increasingly desperate attempts to deny the undeniable. The day the judge delivered the verdict on custody felt like the weight of the world lifted from my shoulders. The court granted me primary physical custody of Sarah and Emily. Brenda would have supervised visitation for now, with a path to supervised if she met certain conditions, including mandatory counseling. It was a massive victory, the most important one. My girls were safe with me. I could finally provide them with the stable, loving environment they deserved. Brenda's financial situation was just as bleak for her. Due to her proven misconduct, the asset depletion, and the clear evidence of her siphoning funds, she received minimal spousal support. Her attorney tried to argue for more, but the judge was firm. She had actively sabotaged our shared finances and her own marital prospects. She was largely on her own. A small, personal victory came when Mike called. He had successfully located and recovered my grandpa's antique pocket watch from the pawn shop. Holding it again, feeling the familiar weight in my hand, was incredibly cathartic. It was a tangible piece of my past, reclaimed from her destructive path. The fallout for Brenda didn't stop in the courtroom. The news of her multiple affairs and the messy divorce spread like wildfire, not just through our social circles, but also at her workplace. Professional repercussions were swift and severe. Clients started pulling accounts. Her reputation was in tatters. And eventually she was let go. It was a bitter pill for someone who had always prided herself on her career success. For me, the focus shifted entirely to rebuilding. My life, my daughter's lives. The house, which had been a symbol of our ruined marriage, had to go. I sold the marital home, severing that last physical tie to the past. It was hard, but necessary. With the proceeds, I bought a new house in a different neighborhood, a fresh start, a place where we could build new memories, untainted by betrayal. Brenda's relationships with Scott and all the other men completely dissolved. Scott, it turned out, was long gone, having moved on to greener pastures once Brenda's financial situation and reputation cratered. The other men had vanished even quicker, unwilling to be associated with her public scandal. She was truly isolated, alone. Sarah and Emily, with the help of therapy and the consistent, loving environment I provided, gradually adjusted. They still missed their mom, of course, but the stability and peace in our new home helped them heal. Seeing them laugh, play, and thrive again was the greatest reward. As for me, the journey had been incredibly painful, a dark descent into a nightmare I never thought I'd experience. But I had faced it, confronted it, and emerged on the other side. I found a deep sense of closure, a new strength I didn't know I possessed. The betrayal had nearly broken me, but it also forced me to find a resilience I didn't know I had. I was no longer the naive husband. I was a protective father, a survivor. Brenda's moral consequence was absolute. She lost her family, her reputation, her financial security, and eventually any meaningful connection she had. Her calculated deceit had cost her everything. Now, as I sit here in our new home, watching my daughters play in the yard, a new sense of peace and optimism has settled over us. It wasn't the life I planned, but it's a life I fought for, a life built on truth and resilience. We're embracing our future, scarred but stronger, together. The fallout from Brenda's betrayal wasn't a sudden explosion. It was a lingering, cold reality. Her moral consequence wasn't a single event, but a slow, agonizing unraveling of everything she valued, or pretended to value. She lost our home, the stability she craved, and the respect of virtually everyone in her life. Her so-called friends, Lisa and Greg, quickly distanced themselves, and her affair partners, especially Scott, evaporated into thin air once the legal proceedings began. She lost her job, her reputation in shambles. NGL, it was a brutal, full-circle moment for someone who thought she could manipulate her way through life. The girls and I, we're rebuilding. It's not easy, and the scars of her actions will always be there, a quiet reminder of what we endured. But we have peace now. We have stability. I learned that trust, once shattered, is almost impossible to fully restore. My heart is still healing, but I'm no longer numb or shaking with rage. I'm just adept, focused on my daughters, trying to create a safe, honest life for them. The betrayal was profound, but so was my resolve to survive it.